Welcome to the Cash Car Convert Podcast, Episode 16.
You're listening to the Cash Car Convert Podcast with James Kinson.
Hello and welcome to the Cash Car Convert Podcast. My name is James Kinson and I am the Cash Car Convert. This is the podcast where cash cars are cool and auto debt is dangerous to your financial future. In today's episode, I'm going to be giving tips that I like to use that I hope will help you in inspecting a used car. So those will be coming up here momentarily. Before I dive into that though, I want to let you know that I'm going to be speaking at a Podcast Dallas meetup here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And this meetup is organized by Gary Leland and Mitch Todd, and it's scheduled for Tuesday, March 4th at 6:30 p.m. The topic I'll be speaking on is getting great interview subjects for your podcast and getting noticed. It's going to be held in Addison, Texas, and that's just a little north and west of Dallas, so hopefully those of you local will know where that is, and I'd love to have you come out. I'd love to meet you, so please come out and enjoy yourself at the meetup. I think we're going to have a really good time. The next thing I wanted to do is, in episode 13, I talked about how to buy a better cash car, and I talked about being aware of the environment where you find the car. And I had somebody come up. I'm a member of Toastmasters here in Roanoke, Texas. So every Monday night I go to the meetup and we give some speeches and have a wonderful meeting. It's full of really nice people. So I love the environment and have a great time there. But after the meeting the other day, as you might imagine, a lot of times my speeches are about my love for cash cars and helping people find their way out of debt and find better cars and so forth. So some of the things that I've talked about on the podcast, some of the things I've written about in my blog, I've spoken about at these Toastmaster International meetups. So after the meeting the other night, one of the gentlemen who's a member there came up to me and he said, I just went out and bought a used washing machine. And he goes, I was so aware of what you talked about. And he said, and it was so true. So he told me the story of two washing machines that he went to look at. And he went to look at the first one, and the place that he went to was just a wreck. It wasn't well maintained. Everything was run down. It was just a really dirty place. And he said he went in and he looked at that first washing machine, and what he saw, is a machine that was just completely worn out. Knobs were missing. It itself was filthy. And he just, felt like that was definitely not the right washing machine for him. Now, to be fair, this washing machine, as he told me this in the story, was about $40. So you might not expect it to be in such great shape. But nonetheless, it was pretty telling, the environment. Then he went to another house. The house was very well maintained, and the lawn was well maintained. Everything about the house said it was a well-run, orderly place. And so sure enough, he goes in and he looks at the washer there, and it's in fantastic condition, very clean, everything works, and he wound up buying that washer. For full disclosure, that washer did cost $100. So you could argue, well, yeah, sure, it cost twice as much. It should be a lot better. But the point really is that the environment where you find these things is important, because the way people maintain their home, the way they maintain their car, those are going to be very similar. It'll be rare that you would find somebody who doesn't maintain themselves and their household well, but who took care of their car. So it's just a little anecdotal story there to kind of highlight and reinforce that, this will work for cars, but guess what? It'll work for other things too. And you might want to try that the next time you need to go buy something. Think about it in those terms. Be aware of the environment that you're going into, and you may have a good feel as to how much care or lack of care the item that you're buying has had before you got to it. All right, let's get into the main body of this episode. Now, when I'm doing my car search and I've done my telephone interviews with the prospective sellers, I feel pretty confident by the time I am actually ready to leave my home that the car that I'm looking at is going to be in good shape, because I've done my homework. And so I feel really good enough now that I'm going to spend my time and my gas money to drive out and look at a vehicle. Now, when I go out and do these inspections, the goal that I'm going after is to minimize the risk of buying a car that might become a problem for me down the road. I'm looking to find a car that's going to bless me and my family, and I want you to find a car that's going to bless you and your family. First thing I do when I arrive is, when I first arrive to look at a car, there are a number of things that I do. Try to either eliminate the car from consideration or determine that it's worth pursuing further and taking it to a mechanic. Now I'm going to start and go ahead and get into the tips that I'm going to be exploring here. The first thing that I do when I pull up is I give the car a look from the street and start to give it an external inspection. And that's the tip number one, is you want to give a car a thorough inspection. So I do it when I pull up, right? I'm inspecting the house, I'm inspecting the shrubs, I'm looking for any sign that this is a well-maintained house and therefore the car may be well-maintained. And then as I get out and I start to inspect the vehicle itself, I walk around it slowly and I look for any obvious signs of defects or imperfection. Does the car sit level? Does the paint match? Does the paint have any dull areas or overly shiny spots? Does the car have any dents? Does the windshield have any chips or cracks? Is the car properly registered and tagged? And this might vary a bit state to state, but in Texas there's a requirement for both a registration and an inspection. Is the car inspected? Is it registered? Is it tagged? Is all that information available as you're walking around and looking at the exterior? Do the doors, hood, trunk align to the body and fit properly? Are the seams even? Do they all open and shut properly? Are the windshield wiper blades soft and flexible? Or are they hard and brittle? Now, this is a minor problem, but it goes to the seller's attentiveness about repairs. Again, if they skimp on the minor things, there's a good chance they're skimping on some of the major things. And so just be aware of that and be careful there. Are the tires a quality brand? And are they all the same brand? How does the tire tread look? Is it wearing evenly? If it's not, then this could mean a larger problem in the suspension or wheel alignment or balance. So you want to be aware of that. Are the wheels and or hubcaps intact and clean? And if you can see through the wheels to the brake rotor, can you check to see if those are smooth or are there deep grooves in them? If they're smooth, then that means the brakes are wearing properly. And if there's some grooves, it means either there's a current or past brake problem. Next, I'm going to check all the exterior lights. Do all the exterior lights work, right? The high beams, the turn signals, the brake lights, the backup lights. We're going to check all of those and make sure that all those work. I'm going to check the driveway out to see if there's any fluids that I can find that look like they may be coming from this car, right? Is there some kind of fluid leak that I need to be concerned about? And once I've done that, then I'm going to make an assessment and determine whether I'm going to go to the next step or not. Chances are I probably will. Again, I've done a lot of research on most of these vehicles before I ever go, and so when I go around and check the exterior, it's it's a more cursory look to kind of confirm what I already know. Next, I'm going to move to an interior inspection, and what I'm going to do there is I'm going to review the interior for any rips or tears in the seats, especially the driver's side seat. Obviously that gets more wear and tear, and oftentimes that's where you're going to find those, especially as people get in and out of the cars. So it's a really good place to look. And I don't know what the deal is with car manufacturers, but it seems some really have trouble keeping the headliner intact. So I'm going to check the headliner and make sure that it's firmly attached and that there are no loose areas or any problems there. I'm going to check out the carpet, see if it's clean, make sure there are no rips or tears or stains of some type that might be a problem to me. I prefer factory floor mats, so I'm looking to see if there are factory floor mats in the car. Again, I like to buy from one-owner individuals, and so I'm expecting that the person bought it new, and I'd like for them to be the kind of person that would invest in floor mats. It's kind of just a small thing, but again, it goes to the type of person that you're dealing with. The next thing I'm going to check are the ashtrays. Are all the ashtrays clean? Whether somebody's a smoker or not, chances are I probably wouldn't buy a car that had been owned by a smoker, but that's something you can decide. But whether it's been a smoker's vehicle or not, I would expect the ashtrays to be clean. If I'm selling a car, I can guarantee you the ashtrays will be clean before I put it out for sale. So again, just another little bit to tell you about the owner. The next thing is I'm going to check all the electronics. So I'm going to check the power windows and door locks, the moonroof, windshield wipers, radio, CD player, DVD player if it has one. I'm going to check the audio. So I'm going to check the speakers to see if they rattle or if one fails to produce sound or something along those lines. I'm also going to check the dash. I'm going to check for all the gauges and dials. Do they work properly? Do all the lights in the dash work properly as well? The next thing I'm going to check is the air conditioner, heater, defroster, and try to make sure that those perform well. And depending on the weather, that can be really difficult. I mean, if it's winter time and you're trying to test the air conditioner, that's tough. If it's summertime and you're trying to test the heater, that can be a little tough. So those are some areas where it's a bit difficult, but in general, you want to try and make sure that, the heater and AC are working properly. The next thing I'm going to do while I'm looking at the gauges there, I'm going to check the mileage. And either I'm going to have looked at a Carfax that I myself have purchased, or I'm going to look at one that the seller has for me. And I'm going to check the mileage to make sure it's in agreement or, close to what the Carfax says so that it's consistent. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the car for some of the things that it should have. Like I'm going to check to see if the owner's manual is in the glove box. Do all the door jambs look good, right? Are they beat up, scratched up, whatever, clean, dirty? Is there some kind of unusual wear on the door jambs that might indicate a problem with the way the car opens and closes doors and that sort of thing? So I'm going to check all that out to make sure all those, again, the seams align, it closes solidly, all that sort of thing. Also, this is the point where, as I'm checking the doors, I'm going to check the VIN number on all the major panels. So I'm going to check those doors to make sure that the VIN number matches the VIN number of the vehicle, to make sure that parts haven't been replaced and that sort of thing. So again, just a good way to try and make sure that you're getting an original car and one that hasn't been in an accident that somehow wasn't claimed or caught. Next, I'm going to move on to the engine compartment. So I'm going to check under the hood. I'm going to look for leaks and other signs of engine problems. I'm going to also check those VIN numbers on the fenders and the hood itself to make sure that they all match. I'm going to look at the engine to see if it looks like it's been recently cleaned. And what that tells me is if it's been recently cleaned, then they could be masking a problem. Now, it could be they just keep their engine clean. That's great. I would really prefer to see an engine with just a light coating of dust, so I kind of know that it's been running a while that way and that they didn't just recently clean it up right before they were getting ready to sell it. But it doesn't mean there's a problem, right? I want to make sure I'm clear here. Just because it has a clean engine doesn't mean there's a problem. It just means you might not be able to see a problem that's there with this inspection. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the fluids to ensure that they're properly filled, look clean and clear, they're not dirty or dark. And what that tells me is if they're clean and clear is that the person who owns this vehicle has had the fluids changed regularly. And this includes brake fluid, transmission fluid, power steering fluid, oil, windshield washer fluid, and cooling fluid. So it really kind of runs the gamut of all those. And I want all of those to have been properly maintained. And that really goes to the health of the car. If you can keep those fluids maintained properly, then that's going to really help you extend the life of a vehicle. The next thing I'm going to check is I'm going to look at the belts and hoses that are on the vehicle, and I'm going to look for those to see if they, look worn out, look like they're in good shape. What's the deal with them? Are they, do they have any unusual wear? Does there look like there's anything to be concerned about there? So checking out the belts and the hoses. The next thing I'm going to try to get a look at the radiator to see if there's any signs of repairs or any signs of an issue with it to give me any pause to think that there might be a problem with the radiator. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm under the hood is I'm going to take a look at the battery and check the terminals to see if there's any corrosion or any buildup there. And if I can, I'm going to try to determine the age of the battery as well, or at least talk to the owner about that and see if I can get a feel for how old that battery is. Hopefully they've got some paperwork for me and I can check that out that way as well. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect the trunk. And what I'm going to do there is I just want to make sure that everything is there and in its place. And again, partially I'm doing this because I don't want to go and start scrounging to try to find a jack for a particular vehicle or a spare tire or, whatever other component should be back there that isn't. So I'm checking for that. But again, it also goes to how well did this person maintain the vehicle? Are they the kind of person that, keeps track of things and keeps everything in its place? Or, do they just kind of throw things in the trunk and, sometimes things go in and they don't go back, they go out and they don't go back in. So just trying to determine that. I'm going to check to see if the car has a spare tire. I'm going to look to see if it's properly secured and inflated. Is the jack and all the parts present and properly secured? Because I tell you, one of the things it's kind of aggravating is to drive a vehicle and hear it rattle, and you don't know where the rattle's coming from. And sometimes it's exactly that. Somebody's got a jack in the trunk that isn't properly secured. In fact, the vehicle I'm driving right now, the jack is inside the vehicle under the back seat. And when I took it for a test drive, there was a rattle. And sure enough, it was the jack under the seat that wasn't properly secured. It was in the right place, but they just hadn't put enough pressure on the thumb screw to hold it down and keep it from rattling. So I got that sorted, and now it runs quite quietly. The next thing I'm going to do is if the back seats fold down, I'm going to check those out, make sure that they work properly. There's not a problem with that. And again, I'm going to look at the overall condition of the trunk. Is it clean? Is it neat? Does it look like it's in good shape, right? And that's, again, there's kind of keep going back to this same thing. I feel like I'm somewhat beating a dead horse, but I don't think I can state it enough. You want to make sure that the car you're buying has been well maintained, and that the person that you're buying it from is the kind of person who wants to maintain a vehicle, that wants to take care of it and takes pride in it. So those little things matter a lot. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the engine performance. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to start the car and let it idle. And I want to see if it's idling properly. And I might start it and stop it a few times. I want to make sure that it starts smoothly. And I want to make sure that, again, the idle is smooth and even. No rough idling, no rough sounds coming from the engine. I don't want to hear any hesitation in the engine when I press the accelerator. I want to hear a smooth rev of the engine as I press the accelerator. This next piece is something where it's handy to have somebody with you, but if you don't, you can ask the owner of the vehicle to help you out with this. You can go around to the back of the vehicle and ask somebody to press the accelerator so that you can check the exhaust coming out. And what you're looking for there is if there's any colored smoke coming out, and the smoke can tell you some things. So if you see black smoke coming out, it indicates that the vehicle is burning too much gas, and so this would hurt the fuel economy. And there's probably some other negative side effects as well, but that's probably the biggest one. With gas being as expensive as it is today, there's no sense to waste it. If the car is putting out kind of a bluish smoke, this indicates that the car is burning oil. Now, if a car is burning oil, it means that the oil is getting past the valve seals or the piston rings. And what this means to you is this could be a major problem. In fact, it's going to be a major problem for somebody. So you don't want it to be you. Next, if there happens to be white smoke, well, this indicates water is getting past the head gasket. And this too means a major problem. Okay, next we're going to take a test drive. And so we've done all the kind of the pre-work. We've walked around, we've inspected the interior, the exterior, checked the tires, we've checked the engine, we've checked the trunk, we've done all of that. So now we want to see actually how this vehicle drives. So we're going to take it out and give it a test drive. And I just think it's worth noting here that while you want to test the radio and you want to test the speakers and all those things, when you're taking a car for a test drive, you really want to have the sound on the radio turned down or the radio turned off. And you really want to have the air conditioning or heater fan turned down low as well. Again, you want to test those things and you want to make sure that they're working. But when you're doing the test drive, you really want to be able to hear what's going on with that vehicle and see if there's anything that gives you pause. So as you're driving the car, you want to see, does it feel like it pulls to one side or the other while you're driving? Do the brakes make a squealing noise when they're depressed? Does the engine hesitate when the accelerator's depressed? Does the engine run smooth and accelerate smoothly? Right. So each of these things are a clue to something. And obviously, if the brakes squeal, that typically means that they're getting worn down. It can just mean that they weren't necessarily installed properly, where there's a little movement going on with the brake pads themselves. And but your mechanic can find that out. So if the rotors are smooth and you hear brake squealing, I wouldn't necessarily be deterred from a vehicle. I would just make sure that I have my mechanic check out the brakes to ensure that they're safe and ready to go. or whether they need to have some replacement done there. The other thing that I'm going to be looking for here is, does the transmission shift smoothly? Assuming it's an automatic, does it run through the gears without being very jerky? There's no slipping, and this a slipping transmission will identify itself this way. As you're depressing the accelerator and the engine is revving up, it'll reach a point where it's revving higher all of a sudden, and that's when the transmission is in the mode of slipping, and then it'll normally kind of with a jerk catch and shift to the next gear. And so again, that's a potential problem, and you'll hear that engine over rev just prior to shifting, and that's a kind of a telltale giveaway. If it does that, then there's certainly a potential problem with the transmission. And again, if everything else on the vehicle is great, you can take it to your mechanic and have them check it out and tell you what they think that is and what the repair might cost. And maybe you can use that to negotiate with the seller if you're still interested in the vehicle. My personal take is, if I think there's something wrong with the engine, if I think there's something wrong with the transmission, I just think there's too many good cars out there, and so I'm going to move on to the next one. But, I'm going to leave it up to you to, if you've got a mechanic that you trust, then, maybe you can get a really good deal by having them do some work for you, and the other person coming off the price enough to cover both the repairs and your hassle. Yeah. So anyway, that's just, my personal preference is I want to buy one that's ready to go. The next thing is, as I'm driving the car, I'm going to be listening to see if there are any unexplained noises. And if there are, what I would recommend you do is note them for your mechanic. Again, this is your inspection of the car. If you're like me, you're not a mechanic, and so you don't know everything there is about cars that there is to know. You don't have the ability to put it up on a rack and check it out and so forth. So, I would still recommend that after you do your inspection and you feel good about it, then you need to take it to a mechanic and let them do an inspection for you. It'll probably cost you $100, maybe a little more, but it's pretty good insurance. It sure beats having a $2,000 transmission repair or a $3,000 engine repair. So spending that $100 on a car that you have done your due diligence on and you believe is a good car, I think that's a good insurance policy to pay for there. Now, after you finish your test drive, if you found a defect at any point in your inspection, you just have to determine, is it a major problem? Is it a minor problem? Is it something that has to be dealt with now, or is it something that has to be dealt with immediately? And then, as I was speaking about just a moment ago, at this point, it's up to you as the buyer to determine whether any of the defects you found are deal breakers for you. And again, I would err on the side of being more cautious in the beginning until you get a feel for this. And, I think I've stated this before, but my own experience says that the deal of a lifetime comes along every couple of weeks or so. If you're patient and are actively searching, then you will find a good car. And for that reason, I personally find it easy to walk away from any car confident that there are many other good cars out there and that I'll find them. Now, on the other hand, if the car passes all these inspections and the test drive, this is also the point where I would gain his agreement to allow an inspection of the vehicle by my mechanic. So those are my tips for inspecting a used car. I hope that you'll find them helpful. I'd ask that you contact me with any questions or concerns. This isn't meant to be an exhaustive list. Again, I don't expect you or me to be a mechanic. These are just things that most lay people can do on their own, and it's just a good precursor to getting that mechanic's inspection. So I want to thank you again for listening. This is the Cash Car Convert. I'm encouraging you to buy a cash car and kick auto debt to the curb. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like more information about this episode, please go out to the show notes. They can be found at cashcarconvert.com/016. Again, that's cashcarconvert.com/016. If you're enjoying the Cash Car Convert podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd think about going out to iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. And whether you do that or not, I sure would appreciate it if you'd go out and give a rating and review. I'd like to get some honest feedback on the show to help me make it better. Getting a rating and review also helps me get noticed within iTunes and helps me find my way up to the top of the rankings so I can help more people get out of debt. If iTunes isn't your thing and you want to reach out and convey a message to me, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at CashCarConvert. Again, that's at CashCarConvert. Lastly, if you have a comment for me, you can leave it after the show notes at cashcarconvert.com/016. Again, that's cashcarconvert.com/016. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every listener out there. Remember, drive a cash car and kick auto debt to the curb.
My daddy is the cash car comment.